Hello, art historians. Sorry for the swirling at the beginning here. We're going to come back with our last video on Western Central Asia. So this is our last video of this area of the world, Persia, Iran, Syria, and that sort of thing. So what we're going to start with right now is we're going to do a description of what a Shahnameh is, because in order to understand the next couple of pieces we're looking at, you need to know what a Shahnameh is. So a Shahnameh is a book called the Book of Kings, and it is a book that is made up of 50,000 rhyming couplets. Roses are red, violets are blue, right? Sugar is sweet and so are you. That's a couplet, sort of. So it's made up of 50,000 of them. And it is one of the longest. It's an epic because it tells like a story of sort of a journey and whatever. And that's what makes an epic. And it is one of the longest epics in the world. And the poem, this epic poem, kind of like the Odyssey is an epic poem, not kind of like, the Odyssey is an epic poem. This is an epic poem. And this epic poem tells the history of the ancient kings of Iran from the very like sort of mythical beginnings, you know, sort of ancient stories, and how the world was created, and, you know, sort of things like that, through the Arab conquest in 651. Okay, so this is pre-Islam. Okay, that's really like the stories are pre-Islam. So this particular book, the Shahnameh, was completed around 1010. And that says AD, and it definitely shouldn't. So that's going to really bother me. So I'm just going to fix that really quickly. CE. There we go. Get back into this. By an illustrator called Abul Qasim Firdousi Tusi. And it was dedicated to Ghaznavid, who was the ruler of Mahmud of Ghazna. Okay. And this is all about like who was in charge of Iran and modern day Afghanistan, the change in power, the change in rulers. And so the poet is trying to show the dynastic power of the Ilkhanid dynasty, and so he's trying to show all of these really important Persian kings. And so why is the Shahnameh important? So it shows, because they're illustrated, they're like the Islamic version of an illuminated manuscript from the Middle East. This is sort of the Persian version of like the Lindisfarne Gospel. Okay, so it shows us the introduction of European painting conventions and how they're used in Persia. We see that Persian art begins to include more and more landscape. We begin to see the influence of trade, because remember, they're trading with China. And so we begin to see the influence of Chinese art on Islamic art and Persian art. We begin also to see European influence. And these are considered some of the most beautiful, important books ever. Not just in the Middle East, not just in Western Central Asia, but ever, because of their combination of beautiful calligraphy and painting and illumination and storytelling. And so they're really, really super important. Okay, so we're going to go to the first one. And this is what this page is Bahram Gur Fights the Karg. That's the title of it. And it's a folio, a page. From the great Ilkhanid Shahnameh. There are a bunch of different Shahnamehs, just like there's a bunch of different illuminated Bibles and a bunch of different illuminated Haggadahs and a bunch of different illuminated gospel books, right? So this is just one of the illuminated Shahnamas, the Great Ilkhanid Shahnamah, because it was produced during the Ilkhanid period, 1330 to 1340. Okay, and so when we're looking at it, we're saying it's Islamic because what is in this area of the world is Islam. But remember, this is their sort of early stories of the kings of Persia. So while these are Islamic people, these are not Islamic stories. These are not Muslim stories, right? These are, they're not sacred stories. They're secular stories. So we can have pictures of people and animals and stuff like that. And that's a really important thing to say. So we're looking at ink and opaque watercolor, which is called gouache. As opposed to regular watercolor that you can sort of see through. Opaque means you can't see through it. I think we might have talked about gouache before, but if we haven't, here it is. And then there's gold and silver as well on the paper, kind of like we saw with the Golden Haggadah. No, with the Vienna Genesis. I knew I'd get there. So, so we're looking, remember Ferdowsi is the poet. We're looking at the ancient history of Persia. And what's really important is that during this Ilkhanid period, right, during the Ilkhanid rule, we're looking at a huge growth in writing and in books and in printing. And it's really, this is really beautiful because they don't really leave they don't do this part way. It's a beautiful, stunning book. There's lots of saturated and bold color. Look at that blue. That blue is so bold. Clearly imported. We'll talk about that. We see lots of decoration around the borders, either with words or, with other like describing what we're seeing. We see lots of narrative. So lots of storytelling, telling us what we're looking at. We are able to look at this sort of painted surface here with, in the grand scheme of things, relatively little calligraphy. If this were a Bible, the words would be much bigger and the picture would be smaller. But this is a storybook. And so we're looking at these bold colors. They're sort of flat, though, not a ton of perspective in them. And what's interesting is we're being told here the story of Bahram Gur, who was a Persian king during the Sasanian dynasty. And what's funny is Bahram Gur, his name translates to wild ass. He is known for being this amazing hunter. He is known for being able to go out and hunt and kill things. I'm going to go forward and show you a close-up of this picture. And so we're looking at this picture of this king, but we have a lot of other things going on here. We are seeing his hunting prowess. Notice that he has killed this karg, and a karg is a horned wolf. And we believe mythical. And it is believed that he was in India and he was fighting this karg in India and was able to kill it. And so, but when we look at it, it's showing us the power of the king. It's showing us the power of the Persian empire, but we're also seeing a ton of European influence. The clothing is European. It's clearly European clothing. And so we see the influence of Europe in what he's wearing. We see the influence of China and well, not necessarily China, but Southeast and Southeast Asia with the introduction of some of these blue colors here. We are able to see the influence of, we see him with his halo on. So we see that he is clearly a very important. He is the ideal king. He has his crown. He has his halo. He has his beautiful costume. He's an excellent warrior. So he has his sword. And then whatever this is, because this is not a sword, his sword is still here. This is like some axe or something. And then he also has this is his bow. And this is his sword. And then this is some other thing. And I can't really tell what it is. And I've never really been able to tell what it is, because when you look, you can see the sheath for the sword. You can see the holder for his bow. You can see his arrows. And then you can see that the head has clearly been taken off of the card. And he has what seems to be maybe an axe in his hand. He has beautiful jewels on his crown and in his earring. He's clearly wearing a jeweled belt. And he appears to have like tiger fabric or tiger skin. Making it clear that he has, or cheetah skin, making it clear that he's killed other animals. So he's an amazing hunter. The landscape feels Chinese, while the clothing and decoration feels European. And so we see this amazing combination of painting conventions from the two different places. Now, at the same time that this giant that the same time this giant Ilkhanid Shahnameh was being painted, look at how large it is, right? This particular page is 16.25 inches high and 11.75 inches wide, which means that if you opened up a double spread, you're looking at still 16.25 inches high, but you're looking at, almost 24 inches wide. It's a huge book, right? But at the same time they were doing this, they were also doing what are frequently referred to as Persian miniatures. And what's really cool about Persian miniatures is the detail in them. Okay, so we're gonna scroll a little bit here, and we're going to look at this piece, when we're looking at what is called a Persian miniature, we're looking at very, very, very little text in a Persian miniature. So when you look at this piece, you see that there's a little text here and here and here and a little bit here, but the rest of it is all image, okay? And so this is called Court of Gayumars, and Gayumars is the person, and I'll talk about him in a minute, which is the folio from the Shah Tamsap's Shahnameh, so a different version of the Shahnameh. And when we're looking at it, it says Sultan Muhammad. He is your what's the word I'm looking for? The patron here. He's the one that organized this. So what are we looking at? We're looking at Gayumars, who is a king, and he is surrounded by both his son and his grandson. And this is Gayumars, and his son and his grandson. And he is talking to his royal court, thus the court of Gayumars, right? And so when we're looking at it, we're looking at a work that was Sultan Muhammad was, we believe he actively worked on this. We believe he may have had help, and that he didn't completely finish it by himself. But we believe that he did a good portion of this. So he was both the patron and the main artist. It's possible he did it all himself. It took over 3 years to create. It is created for, this is Sultan Muhammad, so he's a sultan, he's like an important guy, and he creates it for Shah Tamsap's. So he creates it for this guy, right? So here's your artist, who's a sultan, a really important guy. He creates it for the Shah, who's like the king. And here you see Gayumar talking to his grandson and his son and the court of his like royal helper people, right? And so he's addressing the court. And when we look at it, we're going to scroll in, and here's Gayumar here. But before we scroll in, I want you to look at how the picture comes out over the edge of the air quotes frame, right? So this page, apparently, this page itself took 3 years. The book in its entirety is 258 illustrated pages that took Muhammad 20 years to complete. And it's said that almost all the major Iranian artists were involved somehow in the creation of this piece, right? And so we know that Muhammad did the majority of this particular page, right? We don't know how much of the whole Shahnameh he created, but we know artists were involved in other pages, if that makes sense. So this is the first king, Gayumars, and he is on his throne, and he's looking down at his son and his grandson. Okay, and what's interesting is we see on his right, so his right is his grandson, and on his left is his son. And we see that the whole court is there. Okay, so I'm gonna scroll and show you, this is Gayumars. And here you see him in this beautiful, finely detailed background with this beautiful purple color. We see, the importance of royalty. He has his crown on. We see the importance of the court. We'll look at that in a minute. We know that what is happening here is Gayumars has been told by an angel that his son will be murdered, and that his grandson will become king. And so this is the moment that he is sort of looking down at his son, where he's looking down at his son, and realizing that his son will die and his grandson will become king. It's very, very sad. But what we also see is, I'm going to scroll again, show you back some more. We see all of these beautiful people in the court. This is the bottom of the robe of his grandson, but we see all of these wonderful people in the court here paying their respects to Gayumars. And we see them all dressed in leopard skin because that is, it shows the power of the king. It shows their opulence. It shows how rich they are. We see them bowing. We see animals, wild animals jumping up. And we see, so it's called flora and fauna. We see all these beautiful flowers. That's flora. We see all this beautiful fauna. That's animals. We see the beautiful water and the trees, and the beautiful detail of the court, the royal court, that is there waiting to then pay homage to the king, and then also to pay homage to his heirs, his son and his grandson. And really, it's just beautiful. You can see the decoration of gold. You can see the use of purple, which is that royal color. We can see, the beautiful background is also detailed in almost like a speckled cheetah leopard idea. But I love, like Ilyezu, Triumph in the Name of Jesus, the picture comes out of the frame area. All right. We have one more image in West End Central. I want you to look at this and tell me, do you think this could have been used for for religious purposes? You're right. It could be used for religious purposes. All right. So, how? Well, there's no humans. There's no animals. We have lots of tessellations, these little mathy ones back here, and lots of swirling arabesques and vegetals, the flowers, right? And so we're looking at what is it would have been a prayer carpet, okay? But it's giant. Miss Horman, how big? Are you sure those aren't inches, Miss Horman? No, those are feet. Giant. It's giant. Okay, so what you're looking at is a carpet, one of two carpets, they were a pair, that is 35 feet long and 18 feet wide. And so when you put them next to each other, they're 35 by 36, so it becomes like a square. Okay. Ardabil is in northern Persia, northern current day Iran. And this is considered to be the largest and most important Persian carpet in existence. It is currently at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And it's important for a bunch of different reasons. It's important because of its detail. It's important because we know who created it. It's important because of the level of expertise in its creation. And it's important because of some cool artistic stuff that took place during its creation. And I'm going to explain what I mean to you by cool artistic stuff in a minute. So you're looking at, I'm so sorry. You're looking at a detail here of a mosque lamp. That we looked at the inside of the Kaaba, and this is a similar mosque lamp to the lamps that are located inside the Kaaba. You're looking at a mock-up of the inside of the ceiling of a dome in a mosque, right? This is meant to look like a dome. This is meant to look like the decorations at the bottom of the dome. So when you look at it, it's like you're in a mosque, and here's a mosque lamp, and here's a mosque lamp. And then if this is the dome, then these are those really cool things that hold up the dome, which are called your squinches, right? So we have the squinches in the corner that hold the dome up. We have the dome of the mosque above us. So it makes us think about being in a mosque. This is the oldest dated carpet in the world. We have the actual date of it, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. It is a wool carpet with silk, and that is kind of a problem because wool is really easy to preserve, but silk is less easy to preserve. So it makes preserving a carpet like this a little more difficult. So we're very lucky that we have it. And so the medallion in the center represents the inside of the dome with like these 16 little things, pendants around them. But then you're going to see the mosque lamp, and you're going to see that, Mrs. Horman, they didn't really do a very good job with this mosque lamp because look, one is bigger than the other. This is so wild, my guys. You would kneel here. This is a little thing called a cartouche, which is like a little information panel with some information about when the carpet was made and who it was made by. And you would kneel down here. And if you were kneeling down here, the mosque lamp that was closest to you would look bigger, and the mosque lamp that was further away from you would look smaller. And so it shows that, like, when you kneel, you kneel at this end. They would look the same size. I'm sorry, you don't kneel at this end. You kneel at this end. So that when you look, this one is small, and because this one is farther away, it would look smaller because it's farther away, because it's like 30 feet away from you, right? And so it's for forced perspective. So kind of like what we see in ancient Greece when they fiddle with like how wide the columns are. We do that here with the Ardabil carpet so that they look like they're the same size. So in this cartouche, there is a piece of a poem by Hafez, who is like one of the most important Persian poets. And it says, I have no other place of refuge in this world apart from your threshold. My head has no other resting place except for this gateway. And then underneath it is the signature made by Mas'ud Kanashi, servant of the threshold, in the year 946. And then you go, Miss Horman, it says here that it was made in 1539. What are you talking about? Guys, remember, you have to take the date of the founding of Islam and subtract it from this. And that gets us this date, right? So we have to take the 610 years and subtract them out, right? Because the date in the calendar of Islam starts from the founding of Islam. And this is really cool because this is a decoration of the Ardabil Mosque, which is part of the mausoleum of Sheikh Safi al-Din. So what do I mean? This whole thing is a mausoleum, a place where you bury dead people. But inside the mausoleum complex, right, there's also a mosque. So if I were to ask you, where is this located? It's inside a mausoleum that has a mosque in it. Okay. And it is a prayer carpet because it's part of the Ardabil Mosque. So, you have to sort of think about that. This whole building is the mausoleum, the burial place for the sheikh and his family, like his tomb, right? But inside the tomb, there's also a mosque, and that's where these carpets would have gone. It's stunningly beautiful. It's the pictures are, I would love very much to go see it. And as I said, it is the oldest carpet for which we have an exact date. So it is the oldest dated carpet in the world. Are there carpets that are older than this? Yes, but we can't say, oh, it was made in this year. This is the oldest dated carpet in the world. It would have been made by men. Because it's an important carpet. The majority of weaving at this time period would have been done by women, but because of the importance of this carpet for the mausoleum of the sheikh, men would have done the majority of it. And before you make a big giant carpet like this, you have to do what is called a cartoon, which is a drawing, a sketch, a complete sketch of what it would have looked like, because you can't do something weaving of this detail without having first done a sketch of what you want it to look like when it's done, so that you know when to use certain colors and things like that. So when we're looking at it, I talked about all of these things: cartouche, in-depth drawing, cartoon, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that is the end of West and Central Asia. So we've talked a tiny little bit about Buddhism and a whole lot about Islam. And the next time I see you will probably be for our Southeast and Southeast Asia videos. I hope you learned a lot about the art of Islam and the Islamic world, and the art of its painters and its metal workers and its builders and architects and woolsmiths and all of these amazing things. And I will see you again next time. Bye, guys.